Right on, budget 2025. All right. Thanks, Ryan. All right. Well, thank you so much to everyone for joining us here today. I want to start by honoring the sacredness and importance of this land and the ancestors that once walked where we're standing today. The Anishinaabe, the Cree, the Dene, the Dakota, the Métis, the Inuit, and the Anishinaabe nations who paved the way to what is now known as Manitoba, home to all treaty people. C'est avec beaucoup d'humilité que nous vous accueillons ici à l'Assemblée législative et que nous engageons sur une voie positive pour le Manitoba ensemble. This budget meets the moment that Manitoba and our country is in right now. Budget 2025 builds one Manitoba. Grâce à ce budget, nous sommes prêts à relever des défis de taille et à bâtir les services sur lesquels la population manitobaine compte. Nous allons bâtir un Manitoba uni ensemble. We didn't start this fight, but we are not backing down. We are building up our province. We're Trump-proofing our economy and our country with a historic $3.7 billion investment in capital projects, like schools, hospitals across Manitoba. This is the largest capital spend in Manitoba's history. We're doing it to put Manitobans to work and to protect our economy. We're building 11 new schools. We're breaking ground this year on the Victoria and Ericsdale ERs, a new personal care home in Transcona, and a new personal care home in Lac-du-Bonnet. Budget 2025 puts shovels in the ground on a new healthcare center of excellence in downtown Winnipeg. It opens 3 new clinics, adds hundreds of surgeries at the Grace Hospital and at Selkirk. It includes Plan B in our free birth control program, and it commits funding for a new personal care home in Arborg. Today, there are 1,255 net new healthcare workers on the front lines of Manitoba's healthcare system. This budget pays them their fair wages they deserve. It continues to focus on adding more nurses, more paramedics, more physicians all across our great province. But now that we have a solid foundation of staff, we are ready to start building. So this budget puts shovels in the ground on major healthcare projects that will help deliver better care to Manitobans faster. Our historic investments include $414 million to get Phase 2 of the North End treatment plant done, $881 million in hydro upgrades and improvements to keep rates low, and a new Indigenous loan guarantee to build 600 megawatts of wind power. Budget 2025 has an 11% increase for roads, highways, and infrastructure, more than $800 million. And this budget will move forward projects like twinning Highway 1 and finishing the McGillivray interchange at the perimeter. It includes strategic investments in the things we need to strengthen our trade corridors and protect northern sovereignty, including a $36 million investment in the Arctic Gateway Group. Budget 2025 delivers lower costs for working families where they need it most. Permanent gas tax relief, a hydro rate freeze, and more savings on childcare fees. We're increasing our homeowner affordability tax credit to save families $1,600 a year on their property taxes. And we're following it up with a second increase to our renters tax credit. We're continuing our successful home security rebate program, and we're creating a new program for businesses so they can stay safe, stay open, and stay profitable. And Budget 2025 helps small and medium-sized businesses grow and compete by reducing the payroll tax, something the previous government never did. We're making a generational change in hydro to keep rates low by eliminating the capital tax and cutting their debt guarantee fees. These are big changes that will allow hydro to keep Manitobans' bills affordable while building and repairing the infrastructure we need into the future. We're also continuing our EV rebate program, except Budget 2025 removes Teslas and any Chinese manufactured cars from the list of eligible vehicles. It's part of our government's commitment to be elbows up. From the moment Trump threatens his tariff tax, our government has been responding. We formed a Council on U.S. Trade. We offered tax deferrals to businesses. We removed U.S. alcohol from liquor stores, and we created a Buy Local campaign that Manitobans supported from day one. We took these threats seriously, and we delivered a response that was measured but strong. We are continuing this approach in this budget with a contingency tariff budget that offers hundreds of millions of dollars in support to help businesses pivot to new markets, help workers skill up and find good jobs, and support our canola farmers and pork producers facing tariff threats from both the U.S. and China. This budget is a clear examination of the impact Trump's unjustified tariffs may have on our economy, our revenues, and our communities. We can't predict the future, and with Trump especially, there is so much uncertainty. But we will not sit on our hands, and we will not stand by while working people lose their jobs and families suffer. We'll support Canadian workers with a Buy Local procurement plan and end the previous government's multi-million-dollar contract with a Texas firm to manage provincial park passes. Our budget also makes entry to provincial parks free for an entire year. We're going to keep communities thriving with our new historic funding model. Our One Manitoba Growth Fund gives municipalities 4% of our gas tax revenue to build hockey rinks, playgrounds, and community centers, to rebuild hometown pride all across our province. This budget is ready to take on big challenges and build the services Manitobans depend on. It's about building one Manitoba together. With that, ready for questions.
Hi, Mr. Sala. We asked you this yesterday about the commitment to a balanced budget in the first term. The figures we're seeing today, you seem to be more off the path to the balanced budget. It now requires about a 2% annual increase in spending after this year. Are you still committed to a balanced budget? How do you get there? And given the economic uncertainty, is it important to balance the budget in the time frame that you earlier promised?
We are still committed to balancing the budget. And we're going to do that by continuing to focus on the services Manitobans rely on and centering Manitobans in our planning. And so, for example, if we look at the good work that we're doing in healthcare, we've been clear when it comes to spending in healthcare. We want to see spending move from administrative spending to the front line, from the suits to scrubs. And for example, there we directed SDOs to move 8% of admin spending to the front line. That's an example of us doing that work, of again centering Manitobans, centering those services. And I think our last budget and this budget proves that you can balance the budget while still investing in things that Manitobans need.
Sorry, I'm going to do a follow-up here, Bart. On the payroll tax, the Premier had sort of hinted, and this might just be the fray in question period, but he appeared to leave the door open to phasing it out entirely over time. And I know the budget just mentions the cut in the immediate future, but is that something the government is considering?
We know businesses are facing a lot of worry right now and a lot of risk, and this budget responds to the moment to support them with a cut to the payroll tax. We know that that's going to provide them with important supports right now. It'll also help to improve our investment climate. It's an important start to helping to reduce costs for businesses, and this is the time to do it.
But are you going to phase it out over time?
Again, this is, I think, a really important investment we're making to help businesses at a time that they need these supports. And again, to make our investment climate even better, to bring in more dollars here in Manitoba to create new jobs.
So you shave $2 million off the deficit this year, you keep that going, you'll get balance in 397 years. Anyway, you've increased spending by 7% this year. Why? That's 4 times the rate of inflation, a little bit more than that. Why do that, and why do you think that's wise in this time?
Well, we've worked really hard to ensure that we build out a solid, sustainable fiscal plan through the rest of our fiscal track here in our mandate. We did a lot of hard planning, multi-year planning, to make sure that we built out a cost structure that considered both our revenues that we foresee coming over the next few years, along with our projected expenses. It's a very solid plan built on a foundation of hard work, and again, putting Manitobans at the center of our planning. We're confident about that track we've put forward, and again, this is an important commitment we made to Manitobans, and we know that working to achieve balance and staying on that path will allow us to invest more in healthcare and make life even more affordable.
Okay, so the budget is up by like $1.8 billion in spending. A lot of that's based on increased provincial sales tax revenue, increased income tax revenue. Even before the tariffs were here, economic indicators weren't that strong. What makes you think you're gonna, in this economic climate, get that much more income tax revenue and sales tax revenue?
Well, we're starting from a place of strength. Since we've come into government, we've created over 20,000 new jobs here in Manitoba. And I think that's a sign of the good work that's been done so far since we've come into government. And look, this budget responds to this historic moment. That $3.7 billion investment in capital will create an estimated 18,000 new jobs here in Manitoba. The cut to the payroll tax, our shift to buy Canadian and moving procurement to be Canadian and Manitoba focused will also create more business and jobs opportunities. Our government is focused on making sure that we put Manitobans to work during this difficult time.
Forgive me, my question was, why do you think the income tax revenue and PSD revenue projections are realistic?
Well, again, right now we're working with the information we have about our current state of our economy. And again, our economy right now, we're coming in here in this situation from a place of strength. And we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen on April 2nd. But the message we want to send to Manitobans, we're ready for what comes. We've got a budget that meets the moment. And we've got a budget that will put Manitobans to work at a very important time.
Do you have a set, like at what point will the tariff response come into play? Like how long will tariffs have to go on for?
So that's a really important question. And what we know right now is that April 2nd is sort of our next milestone as we understand it. But of course, we've all seen a high degree of uncertainty, and things are sort of a bit of a whipsaw as of late. And so right now, we're looking ahead to that April 2nd milestone in hopes that we'll see that tariff threat be removed. But we will make that determination after we get clarity over what's going to happen. Right now, we still are operating in an environment with a lot of uncertainty about tariffs. We are, of course, seeing some tariffs come in today from the Chinese on our canola farmers. But the broader 25% tariff threat is yet to manifest fully. So once we get there and we get more clarity over that question, we'll be in a better position to make a determination about when we move to unlock that contingency tariff budget.
And do you have more details on the $100 million tabbed for business supports should the tariff plan go through, and the $100 million for the agriculture supports? Yeah,
so if we do end up in a scenario where Manitoba and Canada is facing 25% tariffs for the rest of the year, our contingency tariff budget spells out how our government proposes to respond to that worst case scenario. It's built off some really important analysis we've had done through partners like Deloitte to understand what the impacts on Manitoba would be. And it seeks to, in that contingency tariff budget, appropriate money to provide direct supports to impacted businesses, direct supports to farmers and producers in Manitoba who would be impacted, as well as put some additional money aside to cover additional costs government may face, for example, for the cost of just doing business, increased cost of procurement and whatnot. So again, this is a budget that meets the moment. We're very attuned to the concerns and worries of our businesses here in Manitoba, and that responds to it.
Hi.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi. On the $3.7 billion in infrastructure spending,
Yep.
most, if not all of that, have been previously announced by previous governments, your government. Are you planning on, because of this tariff threat and the uncertainty and this desire to create all these jobs, the jobs you say you'll create, are you speeding up some of these projects, or are they still just in the same timeline they would be?
So what we're bringing forward here is, again, it's a historic investment in new capital, $3.7 billion capital plan, the largest in our province's history. And what we've announced is that we're going to build 11 new schools. 4 of those are going to be in construction by 26, another 3 by 27, and the last 4 in 28. We're moving forward with 3 new PCHs, investments in a healthcare center of excellence downtown, investments in Arctic Gateway and Centerport, So we're seeing like a significant investment like this province has never seen in creating new jobs through that capital spend that responds to the risk that Donald Trump is creating for our economy here in Manitoba. This is essentially our work at Trump-proofing our economy. And I think the response meets this historic moment. It responds to the threats and the worries that families are facing by getting Manitobans to work, and we are going to build over the next many years to make sure our economy keeps humming.
You say it's in response to Trump, so are some of these projects being sped up? Because they've all been planned for a long time, so are they being sped up or shovels hitting the ground sooner for some of them for this spend?
We've got the biggest capital plan in our province's history. Again, we've made a lot of new announcements today, but exciting new announcements for communities around schools and PCHs and new investments in infrastructure. $800 million in spending on our highways and infrastructure. That's a significant amount of money that's going to be going out the door. Again, that will result in great opportunities for businesses here in Manitoba and great opportunities for Manitobans to get to work.
Sorry, I'll just ask one last one if I could. There's a mention in there about a new funding model for municipalities. Is that the 4% share of the gas tax, or is there something else, a whole new model that you're planning to come forward with?
Yeah, so for many years, we saw municipalities get 0% increases from the last government. That created a lot of hardships for municipalities who are in a position of needing to provide really important services to Manitobans. What we committed to after we came in was to give steady, reliable funding. And that started last year with our 2% commitment to do that year over year in an escalator. This year, we're fulfilling or following through on that commitment with another 2% lift. But in addition to that 2%, we're also funding our One Manitoba Growth Fund, which is additional money for municipalities that will be funded through 4% of the gas tax revenues we generate. That's an approximate $12 million or so of net new money that's going to be sent to municipalities above and beyond that 2%. That's going to help them build community centers, hockey rinks, and the things that families need across our province.
So one of the major announcements that came out of this budget was the new gold mine in Lynn Lake. I'm wondering, which First Nations have been consulted or do you plan to consult with, and is there any plan for partnerships with First Nations on this?
Yeah, that I think is something that is incredibly exciting for our provincial economy. We've brought a new mine online within 18 months of taking office. And I think that shows the good work that our Premier and our team is doing to, again, bring investment to Manitoba. And I think that speaks to the broader work that we're doing in terms of unlocking our critical mineral potential. We recently released a critical mineral strategy, and we know that Arctic, the Port of Churchill, is going to see a doubling of the amount of critical minerals that they're going to be shipping out of that port this summer. That represents a major, major shift here in our leveraging of that maritime port to create more opportunity in Manitoba and to build our role as a trade hub. So very exciting to see that come online, and of course we are going to be working with partners in that area on that project. But again, that's a sign, I think, of the good work that our government is doing to bring more investment to Manitoba.
As a follow-up to that, can you name any First Nations that you've been in conversation with just thus far about the mine?
Well, I know, again, our colleagues that are helping to lead that work, Minister Moses and others that are engaged there, are deeply connected to First Nations in Manitoba and doing this work and making sure we work with them in a collaborative way, in the good way. And First Nations in Manitoba can count on us to continue doing that.
Staying with the tariffs, there was mention in the budget about looking for new trade partners and export markets as well to combat this. What efforts can you point to right now in terms of your government looking for alternatives to the United States?
Yeah, this budget funds $500,000 in new funding to support export diversification. So that's going to help our businesses here in Manitoba look for new markets to shift away from reliance on U.S. trade. And I think that's a really important signal of our government's desire to make sure businesses can find those new opportunities to sell their products in those markets where our products are welcome. So in addition to that, again, we're broadly, our colleagues are working closely with other leaders across Canada and of course at the federal level to break down interprovincial trade barriers to create even more opportunities for Manitoba businesses, not only abroad but right here in our country. And that's the important work we need to be doing right now.
maybe a quick look over at healthcare. I know your government did hit its target, well, exceeded the target of 1,000 new healthcare workers. Speaking to people on the front lines, doctors, nurses, they say many of those jobs just replaced workers who ended up leaving the profession in the past year. What does Budget 2025 do in terms of actually retaining workers, not just hiring them into the healthcare system?
Well, the last government left us in a very difficult position on healthcare, as everyone here will know. And we had a lot of healthcare workers leaving the system and frankly not feeling respected in their jobs. Nurses, doctors, healthcare aides, these are the folks that ensure our families are well taken care of, and they weren't getting the respect that they deserve. So since we've come into government, led by the work of our Premier and our amazing Health Minister, we have brought in 1,255 net new healthcare workers into our system. That's new doctors, new nurses, and healthcare aides serving us. This budget continues that important work of staffing up healthcare. One of the ways we're doing it is that this budget funds over 170 new seats in Manitoba to train more paramedics, more doctors, and more healthcare aides. And a lot of that investment in new seats is happening at UCN so that we can make sure that our northern and rural communities have those healthcare supports they need as well. The budget also continues to fund and support our recruitment and retention office. We know that we have a lot of internationally trained healthcare professionals that want to get to work in Manitoba and want to support Manitobans in our healthcare system, and they struggle to do that at times. That recruitment and retention office that we've invested in will help connect them directly to those opportunities that we have out in our province. And then I think more broadly, another important thing to mention here is we're seeing some real success in shifting away from a reliance on nursing agencies. And we've now got, I think, well over 250 individuals working with travel nurse teams, which offers nurses in Manitoba who want perhaps some of that same flexibility that they had working with an agency to come join back to the public system while we do the work of slowing down those expenditures with nursing agencies. So overall, the work continues. We're committed to continuing to staff up, but now we've got a great foundation that we can build on to start doing the other work, like, for example, putting in new beds. And that's exactly what this budget does. It adds 90 more beds that will be staffed to ensure we can further relieve our emergency system here and slow and reduce wait times for Manitobans needing emergency care. Thank you.
Is there a timeline on when these new beds will be added?
I can't speak to the specific timeline. We're committing, these are funded for this year, so we would expect those beds to come online this year. But in terms of the details about dates, I would just pass you off to a team member to get more specifics on that. But very proud, again, to be building or bringing in 90 more beds. And those aren't just in Winnipeg. Those are across Manitoba, supported by all those great new healthcare workers we have in our system. Thank you.
The budget talks about a new standard template for building those 11 schools. Obviously, your government has scrapped the P3 model. Is there not currently a template in place, and is this new? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so starting from a place here of we know we needed these schools, and the last government announced 9 schools, but they had no plan. It was just sort of a make-believe commitment that wasn't funded or budgeted. We've heard loud and clear from our communities as a listening government the importance of investing in those schools. Proud to have announced 11 new schools. Again, 4 are going to get started this year in design and are going to start construction next year. We're going to be using a standard design approach that will ensure that costs are contained. But of course, it'll be a design that will be modifiable. So divisions will each have their own needs, community to community, and that design will be developed in such a way that it can be modified to meet the needs of local communities, ensuring that school divisions can still have very important input in ensuring they have the schools that meet needs in our local communities.
Just confirming, though, that isn't in place right now. There is no standard template at present.
Not to my knowledge. We are working to develop a new standard, and that standard, again, is going to be one that will be modifiable and will be adaptable to the needs of local communities.
The other thing, quickly,
Sure.
One of your colleagues had mentioned that they believe this is the first time that the term perimenopause and menopause has been included in a budget speech. Can you speak to the emphasis on women's health in this year's budget and obviously the contrast with what's happening south of the border?
Yeah, I think, this signals our government's commitment to women's health and supporting women here in Manitoba. This is an important time, I think more important than ever, to show support in this area. The budget funds $10 million for hormone replacement therapy, HRT, to support women experiencing menopause and perimenopause. It supports a mature women's center at the Vic ER. And also, we have announced in this plan that we'll be supporting Plan B and covering costs associated with that to better support women as well. Thank you.
Minister, how are you? Have
Yeah,
you
I'm
tried
well.
the hard hat on?
I have not.
Okay, we'd love that shot.
Okay.
The 3.7 billion, that's
Yeah.
the headline here, but what do you anticipate spending in fiscal 2025-26 in these various areas? What do you anticipate the government actual spending on capital at that time?
Well, that does reflect our actual proposed capital spend. So it's $3.7 billion funded for this year to support, again, that significant list of capital projects.
All listed in the budget? Or still more to come?
The biggest items are all listed throughout the budget.
Okay. So you have folks in Winnipeg wondering about Keniston and the potholes and the bigger plan there, and then the folks that are looking at an economic driver in Chief Peguis. You are funding New Pick, we get that, but what do you say to municipal leaders and the citizens of Winnipeg who are looking at, yes, this is bold, but something a little bit more ambitious than that as far as the desire to get those projects done?
We know that the most important investment in Winnipeg and infrastructure we need to make right now is in New Pick. And our government is providing over $400 million to help get that done. Phase 2 and completing that, as folks know, is essential to the continued growth of our city. We know that that's a top priority for Manitobans, and so we're proud to be supporting that. In terms of other local infrastructure projects, we know for years, City of Winnipeg, like other municipalities, did not get the funding supports that they needed. That's why we're proud to have brought in that 2% escalator, as well as further money with the One Manitoba Growth Fund that's helping them to meet the moment and invest in the projects that they need to invest in. And we're continuing to work closely with the City of Winnipeg to make sure they have the supports they need to get the job done.
As I recall, that was an election commitment made by this government headed into the campaign. Are you still firm with that commitment to those two projects?
We're still firm to continue to work closely with the City of Winnipeg to make sure that we're providing them the supports and help they need to get the job done for Winnipeggers.
And on healthcare, the digital dollars that you're looking at, digital infrastructure for healthcare, I think it's around the $50 million mark. Yeah. Yes, we're coming into, as the Premier says, the 1980s with the plastic health card. But some key digital announcements here. Are you going to go and renew the Dynacare contract that would also look at expanding not only their presence in Winnipeg, but also towards that digital, you can get tests on your phone type of environment? A lot of other provinces have this. We are still laggards in this area, sir.
I can't speak to the status of that specific contract, but what I can say is we're focused on continuing to move forward with improving services for Manitobans. As you mentioned, health cards, moving out of the dinosaur age with paper. I'd say the last government left us with a healthcare system in tatters and our health cards in tatters, and we're fixing the healthcare system and fixing our health cards as well. And of course, we're moving forward with investments in electronic medical records improvement as well. So that's important work we're going to continue to do. And our number one focus is making sure we give Manitobans access to those healthcare services and supports they need.
And very quickly, Project Nova, talk about how you've made the decision there in consultation with MPI on that, and whether or not that is sending a signal throughout government when it comes to trusting on the E side of things when it comes to making those investments, because you have to be wise on that. You spend that money, and often it goes into the hole here. Mm-hmm. What's your sense and what's your guidance, not only for Crowns but for departments, when you're looking at those types of massive, multi-million-dollar investments?
Well, look, we know that the last government that initiated, supported, and drove that project spent a lot of money in a very irresponsible way. And Project Nova is a good example of irresponsible investment, and unfortunately the last government really drove that issue. We're cleaning that up, led by Minister Wiebe. We're going to keep working closely with MPI to find a way of moving forward to ensure that Manitobans get those important insurance supports that they need, and that work continues. So we'll continue to work closely with MPI on that. As far as the broader concern, absolutely. Our government is very attuned to the risks associated with larger IT projects and ensuring good governance, and that's something that Manitobans can count on. We're going to make sure good governance to control expenditures and keep that cost burden under control. Thank you.
Very quickly, does Manitoba have the skilled labor capacity to meet the capital spending plan and job creation plan?
Thanks for that question. So we know for years Manitobans, skilled labor, skilled workers have often had to leave our province to go find work. They've had to leave Manitoba, and we know for many, many years the former government failed to invest adequately in capital. They would make announcements about certain capital expenditures, and then year over year over year, hundreds of millions of dollars underspend. That left a lot of folks in Manitoba, skilled workers, trades, businesses, without the opportunities that they need. And that's something that I heard a lot after we got into government was, you know, are you guys going to build? We're seeing for many years under the last government a big slowdown. So we have responded to that, and we're going to make sure that we create those opportunities for Manitoba workers, for skilled workers to get to work and create those great opportunities for their families.
If there was a migration of skilled labor, what will your government do to lure people back to Manitoba?
Well, I think one of the important things we did last year with our budget was we helped to reduce taxes. We made Manitoba into a more competitive jurisdiction by lowering the basic personal exemption, or rather increasing it, and changing the tax brackets to make Manitoba into a more attractive place to move and get to work. That's just one thing in addition, of course, to our broader range of affordability measures, our hydro rate freeze, gas tax cut, our permanent gas tax cut, something, again, the last government never wanted to do or was never willing to do. So I think we've made Manitoba into a very attractive place to be, and frankly, as the Premier often says, I think we're experiencing a Manitoba moment where people are wanting to come to Manitoba and be part of the great things that are happening here.
With the city developing big projects, with the province's plans, again, maybe I'm carrying on about this and I shouldn't be, but does Manitoba, again, have that specific capacity and labor to be able to do what you hope you'll do in the next year?
Yeah, I think we have confidence that we have the workers in Manitoba, the skilled labor, to meet the moment. And we've got a large workforce, again, that for many years was not being tapped properly because of underinvestment from the last government. We're changing that, and we're going to put Manitobans to work at a time when we really need to see those opportunities be made available to businesses, workers, and families.
Your budget document says that your P&P numbers are going to be cut in half this year because of the federal changes. There is a labor shortage here. How could you say that? Well, what empirical data do you have to make that statement, Minister?
Well, again, we know that Manitoba workers are ready to get to work after many years of underinvestment from the previous government. We're bringing forward a $3.7 billion capital plan that meets this historic moment that we're facing to make sure that we can create those opportunities, and we're gonna continue to do that work to respond to this historic moment, to Trump-proof our economy.
So I'm just asking for data that demonstrates that these workers exist, Minister.
Well, we can get into the finer points of labor data with team members later, but I can share with you now that we're confident that this is the budget that meets the moment we're in and responds to the challenge that Manitobans are facing and the worries that Manitoba families and workers are facing. We're going to give them the opportunities to get to work.
There are a lot of assumptions here, and I think you can see what I'm driving at on big picture. Assumptions here that could be described as optimistic, perhaps even unrealistic. What would you say to the criticism here that there's a lot of hope and ambition in this little premonition?
I'd say that we are facing a historic challenge and threat. Donald Trump is creating a historic threat to our economy, to our sovereignty, that creates significant risk to our economy. If we see the 25% tariff threat come through in April, we know that that will have impacts on Manitoba and on Canada. We're leaning in to making sure that we invest in a way that protects us and insulates us from that threat. And I think that's what Manitobans are looking for from their government right now. This is the kind of investment that will ensure our economy continues to hum in the years to come.
Yeah, you said that you wanted to get wait times down, obviously, but what's being done for rural hospitals who don't even have full-time ERs, trying to get those hours back up and hopefully to 24 hours across the province?
Yeah, so I think one of the most important things we want to point to here today is all the incredible investments that we're making in healthcare after many, many years of cuts. Again, starting with our budget last year, starting that momentum, we've hired 1,255 new healthcare workers. It starts with staffing, right? And so we've hired, I think, over 480 new nurses in Manitoba. many new healthcare aides and doctors. This is a foundation to ensure that Manitobans can get access to the care they need when they need it, and is the basic sort of foundation that we can build off here now. Having brought in those healthcare workers, we're not done. We're going to keep doing that work through continued investments, again, in new spaces for paramedics, for doctors, for healthcare aides, again, especially in our northern and rural communities where we do have some more challenges in fulfilling those roles. And we're going to keep doing that important work of making opportunities or creating opportunities for nurses to have a more flexible approach to work with those travel nursing teams that allow nurses to leave the agency system and come into our public healthcare system. Beyond that, of course, we're seeing great investments in this budget and 90 new beds. That's going to help to depressurize further our emergency healthcare system. And, you know, in addition to that, more investments in 3 new neighborhood clinics. Those are going to help to create more access to primary care for Manitobans. And, you know, overall, this is a budget that responds to those healthcare challenges and shows that our government continues to be committed to that promise we made to make healthcare more available in that last budget, or sorry, in the last election.
On the affordability question, there are a couple of measures here where the government's going to be taking in a lot more money. Why did you decide to de-index the basic personal exemption and the tax brackets? And the $100 increase in the property tax credit, we're hearing from a lot of people who are getting hammered by higher education property taxes. Even with the $100 increase, the government's going to be taking in $184 million more, according to the budget document. So does that hurt your claims on affordability when people are going to be paying that much more in income tax and education property tax?
This is an affordability-focused government, and I think we've shown that. Last year, we brought forward a budget that had 21 ways to save. I like, you know, throwing that around in the House and reminding the members opposite about all those important investments we made to make life more affordable. You know, hydro rate freeze, permanent 10% cut to the gas tax. And that increase to that homeowner affordability credit, I think, is speaking directly to those increased costs that we are seeing. With the tariff threat, now is not the time to be raising costs on Manitobans. And that's exactly why we're increasing that homeowner affordability credit, because we know Manitobans need that support right now. So we're focused on lowering costs in a long list of ways, and I think that's what Manitobans need right now.
Homeowners are facing higher costs. That's why the revenue from it is going up in your budget documents. Granted, you don't have a lot of money. You're in deficit still. But why was the decision made to not increase it further to match the switch from the refund system, and why was the decision made to decouple tax brackets from inflation?
Well, we have done a lot of really important work in lowering taxes for Manitobans since coming in as a government. Again, we increased the basic personal exemption. We've changed tax brackets to keep more money in Manitobans' pockets. And now, with the changes, this increase to our credit, we're meeting the moment where we're seeing Manitobans that are facing increased costs and risks associated with the tariffs, and that homeowner affordability tax credit increase responds to that by helping to ensure that we minimize their costs, their school tax costs. So when you factor that in and you consider our year-long hydro rate freeze and our permanent cut to the gas tax, again, something the last government was unwilling to do, and that follows a year-long gas tax holiday, I don't think there's any question that we're fighting hard to keep costs as low as possible for Manitobans. That's what our government is focused on.
Can I just jump in on a question after Steve?
Sure.
So what is there, Minister, for people whose homes are valued at more than $400,000? Like they're going to be facing a